Hi everybody. Well, I'm finally starting to get out and get to some of these interesting places that I like to take you to. And if you look behind me, you start to wonder, where is he? Why am I in apparently, literally the middle of nowhere? Well, this might give you a hint. I'm north of the Great Salt Lake. We got rails going by in two different directions. Where would I be where the rails would be going east and west? How about I'm at the site of where the Golden Spike was driven for the completion of the first transcontinental railroad. And let me show you around. There's some interesting history that, I mean, we all knew the Golden Spike and all that, but there's a little bit more that was going on around here. So this is the last tie laid, well, a reproduction of it. There's laurel ties. They had a couple of them here, and they pre-drill the holes like that one there, that I'm sure they use when they do a reenactment. And the original ties were taken out and put into the Railroad Museum in San Francisco. Unfortunately, the 1906 earthquake and the fire that happened afterwards destroyed them. And because the building is closed and there's no interpretive rangers around, I don't know for sure, but I'm a hazard to guess that these may be some of the original ties, because they would have been cut from forest, hauled in. You can see they're cut angles like you'd be cutting down a tree or cutting them into lengths, and then these type of cuts are from hand hewing them to square them up. And you can see they're sort of varied in length, and I mean round on the bottom, still got the knots. And if you walk down today's railroad tracks, of course, you're used to nice straight ties, all soaked in creosote, but this is what the original ones would have looked like. And of course, they would have hauled them on a wagon, or without the bed, but something like this. Stack them up, haul them along the tracks or along where the tracks are being laid. So the date for the ceremony was chosen was May the 8th, 1869. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't really cooperating that day, so they decided to put it off for a couple days. So the actual ceremony took place May 10th, but the Golden Spike was engraved with the original date. And that one, of course, is now at Stanford University. You can go see it there. Like I said, the ties were set in San Francisco. So this is a scene May 9th, the day before, and you can see there's a gap in the rails. They left a 30-foot gap so that when it came time, they'd lay those rails. And they had from the Union Pacific, I think it was, yeah, Union Pacific, four Chinese laborers brought the last rail in, and from the Central Pacific, I believe it was 4 Irishmen. Now in that building way over there, they have 2 steam engines that reproductions of number 119 and the Juniper, which were the 2 engines from the 2 different railroads that met here. And what I sort of think is cool is if you look at the picture, which I will put up in a moment, you'll see a guy standing on a pole that looks a lot like this, standing up on the crossbar of the telegraph. Now the two companies would get financial rewards for laying roadbed, track, but there was no clear direction from Congress where they were going to meet. So they actually went by each other by 250 miles. I think the Union Pacific went all the way to Wells, Nevada, and the Central Pacific went to Echo Summit, Utah. Even though they went by each other the 250 miles, they never laid track on the other roadbed. It was just combined it to the one. So here's that picture I was telling you about. You see the guy over here on the pole. It looks a lot like that pole there. So the photograph would have been taken probably from here, although we can't really see the hills in the background. But what's sort of interesting is the President Leland Stanford of the Central Pacific, and he was also former governor of California, and Dr. Thomas Durant, which is the Vice President of the Union Pacific. And the two of them were the ones that were going to drive the ceremonial spikes. And I say spikes for a reason, but they basically had the honor of ceremonially finishing it. The mall was hot wired to a telegraph line, so when it hit, it would send that signal that it was done. Speeches were given, lengthy prayer. Governor Stanford stepped up, took the hammer, swung, and missed. And then Dr. Durant took his turn and also missed the spike. With each swing of the malls, the crowd of workers burst into spontaneous applause. I'm thinking it's more like, hey, those are our bosses and they can't even hit that spike. So the crew bosses for the two railroads, they took the unwired malls, divided the last poles between them, and then exploded in hurrahs. So it was about $1 billion dream to connect the two sides. So I'm going to step into the shade and give you a little bit more info. Now I'm here on a Wednesday, and there's, like I said, the building's closed. If you come here when they reopen, after things reopen up, they do have a really cool movie in there all about it, a lot of information, and but they do presentations here, and they do bring the two engines out, recreate the ceremony, and yeah, I've never been here for it. If I had only known, I was actually in the area on the anniversary. It's been what, 151 years, and oh well, maybe next time. This is what it looked like 4 months after the completion, and this is September of 1869, but by mid 1870 it had grown up into this boom town. A lot of saloons and gamblers, and newspaperman J.H. Beatty noted the town was 4,900 feet above sea level, though theologically speaking, if we interpret scripture literally, it ought to have been 49,000 feet below that level, for it certainly was, for its size, morally nearest to the infernal regions of any town on the road. So by 1904, they had built a causeway across a section of the Great Salt Lake and basically straightened out a big loop in the line, cutting off about 43 miles. And the so this part of the line was being very little used. And by 1942, they undrove the last spike, and within a few months they'd torn out all of the iron rails to be reused in the war effort. Get an idea how the rails evolved over time. Here's 1869, 1895, 1917, I can't read the date on this one, and 1969. The first ones they called pear-shaped. It's made of iron, because steel was imported, very expensive. And however, when they figured out the steel strength allowed for more cost-effective design, they ended up with that. This is one of the original rails. You can see the pear shape to it. Weighed 56 pounds per foot. So you can imagine this 30-foot rail weighed what? 35, like 1,500 pounds. So as I mentioned before, as they went, they did put up telegraph lines, so that not only moved people and freight, but also communications across the country. 1916, the Southern Pacific, which used to be the Central Pacific, placed this monument at the site of the Golden Spike. And there's the monument today. It wasn't until 1965 that the National Park Service assumed ownership of it, and it was in pretty bad shape. The outside was stucco, it was weathered, and the actually groundwater had seeped up inside and was breaking the concrete apart. And they picked it up, moved it to its present location, but by getting it up off the ground, it allowed the inside to dry out. Because originally, one of the restorations that somebody had done sealed the water in, which just made it worse. And then they replaced the old stucco paint, patched it with a new breathable masonry coating, and now they do yearly maintenance on it to protect it. And I can see some of the coating is flaking off down by the bottom. All right, some more just interesting facts here is that the Golden Spike was made out of 17.6 karat gold, and was the brainchild of David Hughes, a San Francisco financier and contractor. And it was manufactured earlier in the year with the date engraved on it and the names of the presidents of the two companies. But not only bad weather, but there was a labor dispute on the Union Pacific side that delayed their arrival here. And the Central Pacific number 60, which was known as Jupiter, not Juniper like I said before, Jupiter, and Union Pacific number 119 were the ones that got here. Nobody knows how big the crowd was. Some estimates said 500, some said 3,000. It probably was somewhere in between. But there wasn't just that Golden Spike. There was a silver spike from the state of Nevada that was forged rather than cast. It was 25 troy ounces of unpolished silver. And then there was a blended iron, silver, and gold spike supplied by the Arizona Territory, engraved, ribbed with iron, clad in silver, crowned with gold. Arizona presents her offering to the enterprise that has abandoned the continent, dictated a pathway to commerce. And that was given to Union Pacific President Oliver Ames following the ceremony, and it's in the Union Pacific Railroad Museum in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which gives me a reason to go to Iowa. It was actually, the golden spike, like I said, was 17.6 karat gold, but it was alloyed with copper, and it weighed 14.03 troy ounces. And it was basically just, it dropped into a pre-drilled hole. So they didn't actually, drive it into the wood. It was more, like I said, as a ceremony. And there was a second golden spike exactly like the one for the ceremony, except for the date. It was cast at the same time, probably engraved later, with the correct date of May 10th. And it had been noted that the first golden spike engraved appeared rushed, and the Hughes family spike lettering appeared more polished. It was held unknown to the public by the Hughes family until 2005. Second spike is now on permanent display, with Thomas Hill's famous painting, The Last Spike, at the California State Railroad Museum in Sacramento. So maybe I'm gonna have to go there. So just some more interesting little facts. It's all got off of the internet. Obviously, I've been reading these to you. It feels like literally the middle of nowhere, but it was a good place for them to meet up. And with that, like I said, that was the first Continental Railroad, and that definitely tied the country together. Instead of people traveling by wagon, although some I'm sure still did, you could travel across the country on the railroad. So yeah, I think that's it for today, and I'm going to see if I can find other places. I will be getting on the road permanently. Right now I'm still using my son's truck because I'm not that far from his house. So I'll see you later, YouTube.